Okay, so I'm gonna preface this by saying that I'm no one's guru, teacher. I'm just a guy who's been through stuff, especially on my spiritual journey and just through life in general. And my experience, I really feel like I have a lot to share because that's truly what understanding really is. And the only way you can really relay that in a way where it doesn't seem like you're just giving people basic information is by talking about your life and yourself. That's what separates someone who's really trying to elevate you versus someone who's just trying to get you to give them some sort of attention. And so, one thing I really want to talk about when it comes to why people won't get you, especially on your spiritual journey, is the first thing I really want to say about this is that obviously you are different. And you've probably noticed this throughout your life. You probably noticed that essentially it's not that you don't always fit in, it's just that even if you do, you feel like you're out of place in some kind of way. It doesn't seem like you're marching to the same tune as everybody else. It's probably because you're marching to a higher tune. And this is something that you notice when you're young. I noticed this when I was young, mainly because, and I started really getting an understanding of what this really was probably when I was like in middle school or something like that, like way over 10 years ago. And because that's the time when you're starting to become more consciously aware during puberty. You're starting to become more consciously aware of your surroundings because the ego is finally setting in. When you're a child, the ego is not fully set in yet, so you still have that childlike energy, that innocence, that spiritual wherewithal that we're all trying to get back to. And you only really start noticing things like this once you fully become more conscious and once the ego is starting to go through rapid changes. And puberty is one of those times where you go through rapid changes because now that everyone's growing up, everybody understands, human nature in a basic sense. They understand their role as human animals, the difference between the sexes, and how children are made, and just in general what makes you valuable in society. And those type of things, or what people might like, how you fit in, whatever the current fads are, those type of things become important to the ego because it's always trying to build itself up with extra stuff because it has nothing. That's your basic human nature. And you as a spiritual being, you notice this, and I noticed this when I was young because I'm still trying to hold on to that childlike energy. And this rapid shift, like I feel like it was just an overnight thing. Like I understood as I got older. I was like, once I hit about like 11, 12, I understood things you're supposed to understand that age, when the age of understanding. And I still felt like, I still wanted to be my true self, true to myself. I didn't really care too much about doing what everyone else is doing, or oh, you gotta calm that down, like acting a certain way, that's just childlike, and I just kept that energy about me for a few years. And there was a time where it did shut down, but I did keep that childlike energy about me for years because it was who I was. And essentially, a lot of us like to think about, and I always hear other people talk about this, they're like, I wish life could go back to when I was a child. And the reason why a lot of people say this and why you see this online, everybody always says life was simpler when I was a child or back then, of all different generations. And the reason why people say this, whether they were kids in the 2000s, they were kids in the 90s, the 80s, 70s, the 1940s even, they always say, oh, back in the day, it was much simpler, it was much better. The reason why everyone says that is simply because you were closer to who you truly were. As you get older, you make a mask to normalize into society. Whether you realize it or not, there's very few people that don't do that. Because at some point, some sort of event happens where it triggers the ego to protect itself or to adjust itself slowly until you can function and feel like you're accepted into society. And this is something that I wanna say, like, if you can relate to as you were growing up, people telling you, like, the longer you try to hold on to this, who you truly were, or you didn't really like get with the program soon enough, people told you that you were weird. People told you that you were disruptive. And on the positive side, people liked you more, or at least the right people liked you more. And you felt better about yourself. You were full of life, even. And the list goes on. But you get the general gist of what I'm saying. You always felt like you were kind of out of place in some sort of thing. And like I said, somebody could have even told you that, something is different about you. I've had people tell me about that when I was younger. And some people told me to cultivate it. Others told me you need to tone down. So you're getting mixed signals the longer you try to hold on to who you truly are. And the reason for that is because not everyone's the same. And I know that sounds very clear cut and very simple, but I mean on a multi-surface level. So if you read the tripartite something, it's in the Gnostic Bible, but tripartite something something, I'm going to link it in the description just so you have an understanding, but it's a Gnostic text. And it talks about 3 different types of human beings. There's psychical, spiritual, and there's a third one. But essentially, and it actually, if you think about it, it's a mirror of the gunas in Hinduism, where you have Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic. And essentially, there are people who are completely automatons. They look human, but they're like the Sims. They're just people that are there because there needs to be a certain amount of people on Earth, spiritually. So there are people who are just physical vessels, and there's even a name for this, and I forgot what exactly it was, but there's people that have no inner voice. That's who these people are. And it's almost about, I think the last time I seen a research on that, it's almost about 70% of people in a certain study that was done, and I'm also going to link that study too, because I don't want to leave you guys hanging without the proper tools to see what's really happening, but it said at least 70% in the people that were surveyed said that they had no inner voice. I think it's called aphantasia or something like that. Look into that, by the way. Look into that. And so there's people that have 0 inner voice. Now, if you're conscious and you're into your spirituality and you're really doing the true work, most of the time you got there because you have an inner voice that is leading you somewhere. So when someone has no inner voice, people who have no means of visualization, technically those people are not spiritual beings. It doesn't mean they can't become one over time, but they are like NPCs in a video game, essentially. So you have to understand that you're among people that might look like you, but might not be like you inside. And the longer you start to go deeper into your study, this should be a basic understanding, but the longer you start to go deeper in your study, you're going to realize not everyone's the same. And beyond this body, because this body is an illusion, this matrix is an illusion, this quote-unquote simulation is an illusion. Reality is beyond what we can see with the eye. And everything is deception. Even my form right now in front of you, this is a deception. And they tell you this in pretty much every spiritual text that there is, religious text that there is. If you take into example Christianity, it tells you that the flesh is limiting. The flesh, it's not really who you truly are. There's more to you beyond this. And not to attach so much to it, so much to this worldly life. And that's why it's called sin. The only real sin is attachment into this. Fear of what's beyond this. Fear of your spiritual nature. Because that's the link to God. So you have those type of beings, and you also have people who are in between. And it says that they're like fire in the tripartite, trifate, or something like that. Forgot the name exactly, but it said that they're like fire, and that's also like the Rajasic. So it's ruled by passion. Rajasic in Hinduism, ruled by passion, so it can go one way, it can go the other way. So these are people who are in between. So technically, they've gone past just being a regular automaton, extremely low vibrational being, into being like fire. And I'm assuming if you take that fire example, you can link it to Kundalini energy, which is the fire that's within the root chakra. We're supposed to rise up as you gain spiritual power within yourself, do the spiritual work, and then connect to the pineal gland. Do the more research on that on your own. I can't give you every little detail. Just certain things you just have to learn and catch up on. So any book on raising Kundalini, any book on balancing your chakras, you can even check out my chakra series on this channel. Follow that and start doing the spiritual work so you get a full understanding of what I'm trying to get at here. And then you also have the Sattvic people. So these would be people who already come in to this world on a spiritual journey. Sattvic, and if I'm not mistaken, the last one will be spiritual. So physical, spiritual, and whatever the lowest one that was in the tripartite phosphate. And then same thing for Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic. So Sattvic is technically the Brahmins in society, the spiritual beings in society, the gurus in society. There are some people who, and like they say, there's old souls, ancient people that they've either come back to teach, whatever the case may be, come back to do a certain work, then move on afterwards. That's what Sattvic truly is in terms of describing the three different types of people. So these people, they're more than just humans. They've probably been completely different entities. They could be fully immersed into their God nature, just taking on a human form, whatever the case may be. But these people, they've done the work. They've been around long enough. But they might be in a human existence like you and I, undergoing whatever story that they need to go through. And so these people, especially when they're young, they're probably so advanced that most people around them don't get them. This may or may not be you. You may not be as advanced as you think you are, or you might be more advanced than you think you are. But you would only know the more spiritual work that you do, the more full understanding that you come into why you came here, what you're here to do. You could only figure those answers out for yourself. It's not something that I can tell you. It's not something that someone else can tell you. I mean, sure, you can get a reading, but it's going to confirm something that you may or may not already be in agreement with. And so only you really know what's really going on within. So you have to pull those answers out by connecting with yourself through meditation and doing spiritual work, inner work. And you want to build self-sufficiency. So the reason why it might seem like no one gets you in this sense is because you might just be a completely different being than them. Your level of light naturally, your level of vibration naturally might be much higher than them. That's why, you might not be with the program because you might have been through so many different lives. You have more experience. It's like you're an adult around a bunch of kids. They just don't understand because you're more mature. So you have to break it down to them. Or you might be around people that speak a different language than you. So that's another way. You have to try to meet them where they're at in some sort of capacity. So this is essentially, and it does sound sort of elitist, but it could be the case. That could be a reason why it might seem like no one gets you. And for me, because I also had a reading about that too. And in that reading, it was was an Akashic reading. No, I think it was actually during a hypnotherapy. So during my hypnotherapy, so I'm going through my entire life at this point. And one thing that I got was that my light was so bright at that time, and I let go of it because essentially I went through a lot of pain as I was growing up, especially during that towards I would say towards the middle of the puberty period. I went through a lot of pain, emotional pain. But what stopped or dimmed my light was that I allowed that pain to infiltrate my mind. And because the mind is all, according to the laws of Tahuti, because the mind is all, because the mind creates your reality, that's what created and shifted my reality around. Pain. And I started noticing that things slowly becoming, integrating me more into still normalized in a sense. But it wasn't really like that. Like even if I allowed that to bring me down, it only brought me down emotionally. And I still kind of held on to it. I always knew what I wanted to do. I always knew what I was supposed to do. And the spiritual realities of it didn't become apparent until later. But I was never fully attached to, a certain spiritual or religious thought process. I always had an inclination to a more universal understanding of things. Understanding that everything was important. Feeling like I was here for more than just, being another cog in the machine of society. And that's just something I held on to. I also held on to, just in general, the storytelling and the story writing I always did as a kid. I held on to those things. And when people are telling me, hey, you have to be career oriented in society, that's how you're gonna be successful. It's not that it doesn't make sense to me. It does make perfect sense to me. But it felt foreign to me because it was almost like I had to choose something that I didn't really feel like aligned with who I was. So it took me years to figure out what I wanted to study in college. It took me years to figure out some sort of employment that I felt like was good enough for me to get into while I was still doing other things. Like obviously I kept myself afloat, but it took me years to find places where I felt comfortable enough to where it's like I didn't want to jet in a few months or so, or a year or so. Because it was just like you had to find your way in society, because it seems like society is kind of based around like, remove your identity, just kind of put you in a suit and tell you to do stuff. Do that for 20 years, then try to, balance your life around a very, very small retirement. I didn't feel like that was aligned for me. I felt like I would, there was just more to life than that. And I understand, like, obviously those things are important, careers are important, and college is important, this and that, if you want to really take it to the next level, but that shouldn't be where you stop at. That shouldn't be the end all be all of life. There's so much more. Better spiritual realities than that. Obviously not for everyone, because like I said, 3 different types of beings on this planet. So that might not be important to a Tamasic person, or like a completely physical being. But it will definitely be more important to a spiritual being. And I remember I forgot exactly who said it. It could have been Brother Panic, but it said like once you really become like conscious, that's when your issues begin. So when I became conscious about 4 or 5 years ago, like fully into the spirituality, fully doing the work and the meditation, yes, big things happen, big shifts happen, and that's when it started to become more apparent why it always seemed like I was the odd one out, or like I just couldn't connect. There was times, not even just growing up, like obviously I had people around me, people that I trusted, still have the same friend group that I grew up with, people that I clicked with, right? But there were times like I would be out in public or in class or at work, whatever the case may be, people will click up, you know how society functions, especially if you're observational about what's going around you. You know how people, especially when they're new, no one really knows each other. Then people start talking to each other. Then the cliques form. Then people get kicked out the cliques. And then obviously people have their groups over here, groups over there. They either start fighting or they figure out how to tolerate each other. And whoever is most dominant, whether it's an individual or whether it's one of those groups, takes charge. Leads them to whatever's supposed to happen. This is how it usually always plays out. My energy, either people envied it because I was more independent. Like there would be times when it's like, okay, I honestly see like I'd be around people. It's like, okay, I don't really want to join these people group or whatever the case may be. I was just on a different path, different wavelength. Some people would see it as, oh, he thinks he's too good for us, and he doesn't want to hang out with us. whatever the case may be. So they take it as an attack because they take it personally. But you, spiritual being, probably just doing things, doing your own thing. I was always focused. If you've been with this channel long enough, I was putting up cutscenes of the video game I was making, which is now the story manga that I'm creating now. Always focused. Not everyone is like that. It's even as you grow up, it's like you start to realize like even basic things. You try to hold on to people who were in the past that you might have clicked with before. But if they're not moving where you're moving, you have to shed the dead weight, whether you realize it or not. So it could be as simple as, like, okay, I see the importance of planning for my future, but you still got homies that they still want to go to the club, try to hit on shawties, stay there for hours, all night, drinking, clubbing, partying. Not saying anything's wrong with clubbing, partying, or even drinking, but obviously you have to get your priorities together. And if you want to be successful in general in life, like you have to start to let little things like that go. There's a time and place for everything, but the time when you're young is important. The time when you first become conscious is important. Like you can't be doing the same things that you did when you weren't conscious, because now you're kind of moving, you're kind of going against the grain. What led you to consciousness was understanding that, okay, there's things that are messed up in this world. I don't like the way that things are. I don't like how I've been. I don't like the people I've surrounded myself with, the life I'm in, the situation I'm in. I need to change this, and I need to start with myself. That is where it begins. And unfortunately, that might also include you shedding the dead weight. And even if you have no one around you, because you might be so independent as a spiritual being, you might be used to not being around people, you also have to figure out, okay, how can I raise my vibration enough? How can I change my mindset enough to be open to the right people in the right situation and the right environment for me to be in, for the right people to be in my life. These are things that, like, it's a constant battle between your ego and your higher self, because you have to understand, like, it's leading you down a road that you want to try to plan out logically, but you can't see the full fruits of it if you try to control it so much. You just have to keep doing the work. And that's hard for some people. So it might seem like no one gets you because you might still be in a situation where you're supposed to be moving past this and you're kind of fighting it. You're supposed to be moving out of a situation. You're fighting it. You're trying to adjust. You're trying to cope with it, when you should probably just be out of a situation or be away from whatever people or environment that you're in. It's probably your soul calling for you to make a change. That's a spiritual message. So it might seem like no one gets you because that's the message for you. No one gets you because you're supposed to be in a different area. And also, when you're supposed to be making big changes in your life, you have to understand that these big changes, whenever big changes happen in the world, there's a lot of people that get pissed off. There's a lot of people that don't want changes to happen. But they still, like, people in authority positions, they still make these changes because they're like, if we don't make these changes, something bad's going to happen. Or whatever the case may be. That's how leaders move. So you as a spiritual being, you're already naturally a leader anyway, in some capacity, and for whatever you came here for. So you making rapid changes, other people might not understand why you're doing that. They might try to hold you back. That's a test too. You might try to hold yourself back because you might be attached to the way you've done things and how you've always done things. Some other people might be attached to who you've always been in your life. This could even be family members telling you, I don't like the way that you're doing things. I don't like that you're not practicing this religion. I don't like how you're doing this. I don't like your new attitude. I don't like your newfound confidence. Whatever the case may be, people will try to hold you to the image that you had in the past because they feel more comfortable about it. Or they might be intimidated by it because they're like, wow, I wish I had that confidence. I wish I had that direction when I was that age. But because this is making me feel wrong about myself, I'm just going to attack this person because I'm too scared to do the work myself. So it makes me feel better if I just try to hold someone back. That's someone you need to get out of your life. And This is another reason why it might seem like no one gets you. It's probably something that you probably encountered, like I said, when you were younger. This is, like I said, puberty is a really good time to reference, because this is like usually when stuff like this happens. People are finding their way in life, or when people actually enter into the real world, whether they graduate high school, college, whatever the case may be. They'll see you later down the line. They'll try to hold you back to who they think you should be if you're elevating in life, spiritually, mentally, physically, financially. They will try to hold you back. So the more you grow spiritually, there's going to be little tests like that. And it's just something that you have to be able to pass every time. And you pass it every time by understanding, okay, I need to have the right mindset about this everywhere I go. Do I want to stay the same? Or do I want to make constant progress and constantly refine myself, so I can be around the right people, even if the only right person at the time is me? Sometimes it's going to be that way. And you have to make peace with that. So, and another reason why it might seem like no one gets you is really because, and I don't like the term chosen one, because no one's chosen for anything. You're just here to do a job, to do a duty, and that's it. You chose that. No one chose you. If you want to bring in the term chosen one, that means that there's an entity outside of you that made the decision for you. It's bringing in this Messiah complex, and that's not healthy to have. Whether you're spiritual being or not, it's just not healthy to have, because chosen one, you're putting yourself on a pedestal, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't put yourself on a pedestal for your own mental well-being, but you're putting yourself on a pedestal for other people to admire you. So I'm not going to tell you you're chosen, because you're not. But I will tell you that you probably chose to do something important, and that's why you're incarnated in this life, doing something right now, or even watching this video, because you're inclined, you're already moved to do something. So it might seem like no one gets you because you have a certain energy in a direction about yourself. And that's just something that people, like I said, it might intimidate other people. It might make them feel like they're nothing. It might make them feel inadequate. But that's their problem to deal with. It's not yours. So, and there's time, like I said, my constant focus and obsession with not only this channel, but with my creativity, my creative works, fitness, physical fitness, everything that I do, building myself spiritually, the constant knowledge that I'm always gaining, the amount of confidence that I carry myself with, and the constant refining of myself, destroying my past weaknesses and growing in elevation. These are things that I went through. All these different boxes. These are all different things that I went through. And yes, I met resistance at different areas. Yes, I met people, they try to, because like I said, and this happened many times, people think that, okay, I don't like the way he's acting. I want him to be a certain way. So I'm going to act a certain way to manipulate him to make me feel better. And at every time, I did not allow that to happen, because I care about myself, my direction, where I'm going, and who I'm building myself to be. So no outside entity is going to control that besides me. And whatever situation I may find myself in, this is the mindset that I carry myself with, because I'm driven spiritually by a force beyond just this body, something that beyond myself, that is taking me beyond where I can possibly see, but I know the direction is good. So these are things that you have to understand. These are the spiritual realities of why it seems like no one might get you. And all in all, it obviously, yes, it's because you're different. Yes, it's because you chose to do something important, and it's your duty to fulfill whatever it is that you came here for. But it's also in your hands whether or not you achieve that or not. So just because you chose something doesn't mean you're gonna do it. You have to still do the work, and your spirit is going to force you whether or not, because obviously the further you go against the grain, the more resistance you give, there, like I said, there's a force beyond just your ego working here. It's going to force you, or you're gonna be put in a position where it's like you either do this or not. So you do have the choice, but at the same time, you have to understand like it's beyond just your thinking mind. It's beyond just your physical body. There's different parts of you that you might not even understand yet that are at play here, and you have to respect that. You have to respect yourself. Your self-respect is going to be what carries you out of this. So don't be worried too much about why no one might get you. Be worried about, do I understand myself? And if I don't understand every layer of myself, I might understand my body physically, mentally, and things that I've been through. But do I understand who I want to craft myself to be? Do I understand what I was and who I am now, and why I want to bring the lessons that I learned into the future, but not bring these current versions of me into the future, because I can create something better. Those are things you need to be understanding. Those are things you need to be worried about. You don't need to be worried about anyone else. Other people, you want to use them as either fuel or a mirror. And because you have to look at, okay, yes, certain things might happen, but why am I allowing these people to make me feel a certain way, when if I'm an all-powerful spiritual entity, why can't I just control my emotions and not care? Or adjust, whatever possible way I have to be able to do it. So don't be worried about that. Just be worried about, how can I get to the next level? These are things that I'm worried about. How can I get to the next level every day? What does my spirit have for me to do today? What's next on the spiritual agenda today? This is what meditation is for, because you close your eyes, you take yourself away from this fake material world, and you look within. The only reality is what's in your mind. Not in your head, because your head is physical, but what's in your mind. And your mind goes beyond what's in your head. So these are things to think about. So that's why it might seem like no one gets you. Focus on getting yourself, and then you'll start to understand that there's bigger realities, bigger questions that you need to find the answer to. And chase those things. Don't be so concerned about the approval of this world, because you're probably beyond it. And even on a bigger level, we're all connected anyway. So because we're all connected, because we're all different drops in this sea of existence, everything is a different type of energy. So they might be a completely different energy, and you might be a completely different energy, expressing itself differently. So it might not be spiritually for them to get, the same way it might not be for you to get. So that's pretty much all I'm really going to say on this topic. If you have any questions, you can always shoot me a comment, a DM on Instagram. Same thing as Red Reams on Instagram. And I'll answer to the best of my ability. I hope this helped whoever's worrying about why it seems like no one gets them, and gives them spiritual answers and spiritual directions. Wish you all luck in your journey, and peace.